like he was limited in how he could perform as an owner of a business. Now, mind you, as an owner of a business that was not just any business, but that was an amazing concept. And he also had another business, and he was a nurse, had graduated, college with high marks, graduated high school with high marks, but he had this stigma that was making him see himself in a way that was so limiting. And so I wanted to do whatever I could do to translate all of that garbage that had been given to him into something that would give him the encouragement and the boost that he needed to understand that who he was in the world was someone that was absolutely needed because of the way his mind works. And so let's roll the slides, because I want us to get into this today, this discussion, and I want us to really see it, from a perspective that will be helpful. I mean, I've done a couple of talks on it. I did a whole TED talk in the metaverse last year on it. And some of that information is available on YouTube. Currently, it actually is available on our channel. It's not necessarily in our podcast, but I really want to talk about it today from a different perspective than what we talked about in the presentations that I've done before, because I want to break this down to how do we use it? How does it become a usable tool, in the hands, of capable people? What is it that we can do with it? And when we begin to see our human capital as capital and we invest in our people, what do we need to do to invest in them to give them what they need to have so that everything that is in them is working, for their benefit and can be, of course, a benefit to the company as well. Okay, Javon, let's go with the slides. So today we're going to talk about dissecting the ADHD conspiracy. We're going to debunk some myths, but we're going to celebrate the sentient mind. Next slide, please. So let's set the stage. How will we begin this journey? We're going to talk about, I'm going to introduce to you the concept, that I have, and talk to you about who I am and why I feel qualified to have this discussion with you today. I am a person who has tremendous impact in this area because I have not just studied, because I do have, several receipts, or I call them, receipts, degrees, and I've gone to school, and, I did my primary college education was centered around, special needs and education in that area. It's having people who were severely handicapped or learning disabled as well were students of mine. And when I say severely handicapped, I'm not talking about what they were. I'm talking about the diagnoses that they had. And so it was often my experience that I had a group of students, in my class who had stigmas based on, a 504 plan. We didn't call it that back then. It was an IEP. And based on that, we were given every year the task of writing these goals and objectives that they were supposed to achieve during the year. And it was supposed to create the opportunity for the instructor to help them overcome something. And I really, at some point became very disenfranchised with the whole concept of special needs, if I can say it that way. I know that people have to have a way of seeing it so that allocations of finances can be put into buckets to, help make sure there is enough money to work with students who, may learn differently, and it may cost more to educate them because they learn differently. I get the concept. However, I have come to understand that, as a neurodiversity advocate, and an avid researcher, my career in education, literally has been dedicated to understanding and championing cognitive differences. And I am one who believes that these differences make us better. The differences allow us to really serve people better. When we have the different perspectives, when we understand things and can see things from many different ways. I remember as I was an instructor teaching, I had mostly boys in my classroom. It was really weird, that I would every year, get the luck of the draw college, and I would end up with a lot of boys. And so because I had more young men in my classes, I catered a lot of my material, to things that would be not just appropriate for them, but also things that they may not even have ever thought about. So I played to their strengths and I played to their weaknesses, a lot, so that I could actually help them understand how their differences work together. And so I did teach, uh, probably, one of the most important areas of teaching, which was preschool. And I worked with children because I started teaching preschool when I was in the 8th grade. This was way, way, way before there was any type of requirement that you were a certain age to be a preschool teacher, So here I was, 14, with a work permit, teaching in a regular preschool environment. And I crafted, even at that time, I knew to craft my lesson plan based on who I had in the room, and that could be who I had in the room on any given day, so sometimes I had to do adjustments, or who I had in the room, every day. I had come from a family who served the community of persons of special needs. I had aunties that were that had special needs people in their homes. Okay. And I call them special requirements. I don't call them special needs, because their requirements were what they were based on, how these people were designed. Okay. And so some of them had these diagnoses on them. I remember the one that I really hated was mentally retarded, or mental retardation. I just felt like that was just like the most horrible thing that anybody could call someone, or say about someone, because, I understand, the concept again of someone having a learning difference. But to, deem them as being retarded and having the connotation at that time that had on people, it just left me in this, place. And so even as I was a child or a teenager, and I would go back and forth between Northern and Southern California, where my parents lived and where my aunties lived, and I would be able to, go to their homes where they were serving people that they called patients at the time, patients. And I just remembered some of the things that I had feelings about concerning it. And none of it had to do with how my aunties or any of my, cousins or even my parents treated the people or anything like that. It had more to do with the view and the overarching construct, that created a reason for us to have a view, of people that was negative. A person is born how they're born. Their requirements in life are what they are. And we, need to learn, how do we embrace those differences and how do we use those differences? And I just remember, one of the ladies that was there, she used to crack me up. I would laugh so hard because of the way that she saw things and the things that she said about, things. And those kinds of memories are just stuck in the recesses of my mind, that causes me to understand that our world is full of different kinds of people who have challenges, people who do not, have, cognitive challenges, but they have other kinds of challenges. I just, and I believe that we need to search for those things that we can extract from each other and really, give it back to each other in a way that is causing us to be better, mirroring, the wonderful concepts that we're receiving, and, giving back from ourselves, taking it with what we are and what we have, putting those things together and, giving back. And so that's just my concept. And I know that I probably am alone in a lot of this, but if I'm not, please, put something in the chat to let me know, or put something also, in the comment section, to let me know that this is resonating with you. So how do we challenge ADHD myths? Well, we first have to confront the misconception head on, and we got to back it by the latest research and some real world examples. I mean, we are going to do it today, based on the information that I have. And again, like I said, I'm an avid researcher. I didn't come with a bunch of statistics today, although I have them. I didn't come with, the heady stuff, all of the things, the academia. I didn't bring that today. I am just bringing some common themes that business owners can use to, be very well-rounded with knowledge, and knowing, this information should help you learn how to better work with the people that are on your team, okay? And how to encourage others to work together with others who are on their team, who may learn different, see things differently, and actually may have a perspective that will help to make your company better. So we're going to explore some neurodiversity today. We're going to discover how embracing the cognitive differences can lead to innovative solutions and progress in our society. And then we want to celebrate cognitive brilliance. We will showcase the unique strengths and abilities often overlooked in individuals who have been diagnosed with ADHD, or who present with some of the characteristics that have been attributed to that particular moniker. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about the narrative, okay? And I want to give a historical perspective. In 1902, this is when we had like the first clinical description. Sir George Steele describes children with attention deficits and hyperactivity, and he laid the groundwork for future ADHD research. And I want to say this, this is not a bashing session, okay? I did go to school. I did, my time in graduate school discussing, and this was back when I was really young, because I mean, remember, or some of you who don't know me, and you may be seeing this for the first time, but some of you who do know me know that I went to high school and college at the same time for a good portion of my education while I was in the 10th grade. Well, I actually technically graduated when I was in the 10th grade because I took the exam, but my mom made me stay in school. So I was in this MedCorps magnet program, and we, had a good portion of our classes that I took at the college were, regular college courses. And then, of course, I was also doing the high school courses, even though I had the diploma already technically because I'd already taken the class and are taking the exam that would allow me to graduate from high school in the state of California. But, I also was one that lived in the library, and I just studied anything I could get my hands on. And if I could not find the material, I was researching and pulling things together. And so, at that time, I already knew that I wanted two things. I wanted a degree in music, but I also wanted the degree in music so that I could do music therapy, which was, going to provide a landscape for me to be able to serve the community of people who learned differently. And that was really my goal from the time I was in the 9th grade. Okay. So, as a 10th grader, I was already looking for solutions. I was looking for curriculum. I was looking for all types of things that would allow me the ability to really spread out in this area. And when I was working with the children that I worked worked with when I was in the 8th grade, I was also looking through the room and finding children who had did not have the abilities that other children had, and seeing how I could serve them better, what it is that I could offer to them. So, when we're looking at these diagnoses or concepts, that Sir George Steele drew out, he saw some things about how children learned, and he saw what they called deficits at the time, attention. And again, it's just an awareness, I believe, and I mean, you can quote me on this. I mean, fact check me on this, but what I have come to understand is that working with children and adults who have had the ADHD diagnoses provided for me the ability to see characteristics and to outline, a set of things that are, the same about how these people with the diagnoses think, how they work well, and even how they view their perspective. How they view, not perception, but how their perspective works. And so some of the things that we called, hyperactivity, um, you know, I I won't go into all of that right now, but I will say that I have come to understand that energy, when directed, that we used to call hyperactivity, can be a tremendous tool in a business. And for me personally, the people that I have had in my life, children included, that have this insatiable, portion of their personality that gets them moving, and constantly they've got to be working on something, and they're doing it at a pace that others can't even keep up with. This is not a deficit as far as I'm concerned. Neither is it something to be looked down upon, but it has been something that has helped me build some, amazing concepts, craft out some intellectual property that is just dynamic and all of that. But in 1902, that was what laid the groundwork for the research about these differences, and what, of course, was seen back then, and sometimes often misconstrued, became the wherewithals of what we now utilize to, recognize what I call the sentient mind, and I call it a level of brilliance. In 1980, DSM-3, okay, which is a diagnostic tool, or testing mechanism that was used and is still used, to characterize, classify, label people, was introduced. And so it officially enters the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, solidifying its place in psychiatric diagnosis. And again, like I said, this is not a discussion about the tools. We're not going to spend any time on that. You can do the research, fact check, and go and find out all about that part. I want to talk about what we do about it. But I just wanted to make sure that we had a flow and you understand how things came to be and where things entered the landscape in terms of time, because you will be able to, better understand what happened in our school systems, what happened even in the workplace, what happened even in some communities, and we'll mention just slightly a little bit about that in a minute. But 1990s to 2000, there's some rising awareness. ADHD becomes increasingly recognized, leading to more diagnoses and sparking debates about overdiagnoses and medications. And of course, enters the landscape the ability for schools to get more money, to work with people who have the diagnoses, and the prevailing thought that medication needs to enter our list of things that we do when we have these diagnoses, to make people with this diagnosis more docile and easier to manage in a classroom setting or in other settings. And, and I know that some people who are probably listening to this right now are saying, well, how were we to deal with it? I mean, children who are bouncing around all the time and, they couldn't seem to sit still and it was difficult, and so using medication made it easier to manage their behavior. And I get it, because people without skills to do something, they create ways to make it, simpler. And I remember being, introduced to the concept that if a child had Ritalin or some of these other drugs that they were using at the time, lithium, just lots of other stuff. They had quite a bit of, cocktails that they would give to children, who were experiencing the characteristics and displaying them, some more frequently than others. It was to help the child. If they were calmer, then they could learn better. If they were able to sit longer, then they, could get along better. People wouldn't, be looking at them in a way that could cause them to feel socially unaccepted in the room. And I will tell you that, I remember as an instructor feeling when a child showed up after they had been given these drugs, I would feel awful because I would feel like, what can I actually do to serve them better in this situation now that they are full of all of this stuff? I can't get out of them what I need to get out of them so that they can learn better, so that they can actually add more to their community, to their family, and even to the classroom, to help others see what they were seeing. And so it was just, horrid as far as I was concerned, because I had other ways of helping them to learn how to deal with their, the energy that was running through their bodies and even seeing what we could do with that energy, and how even that energy could be utilized to infuse others who were not energized at all about being in the classroom setting. But present day, we have some shifting perspectives. There is a growing recognition of ADHD's complex nature and the potential strengths of a person who has this kind of awareness, this sentient mind. And there is, a prevailing thought that challenges this deficit-focused narrative that was, what it was that teachers and educators, administrators, doctors of philosophical thought, were looking at the time. And I guarantee you that what we're experiencing now is a far cry better than what we've dealt with in the past when it comes to how we approach the narrative. But there's still some negative connotation, and we want to try to walk through how do we, in business, take people who see things differently, who are picking up things that others are not picking up. How do we take that and use it in a very powerful and positive way? Next slide, please. Well, the first thing we have to be able to do is, look at, the myths. Okay. So I don't want us to, come into this assignment of thought where we're seeing ADHD as something that's not real. I mean, there is a real learning difference in people who have these heightened levels of awareness and this level of energy that's coursing through them, that causes them to, need to move around and they're, instilled with the ability to, sense things that other people don't sense. So neuroimaging and studies do show clear differences in brain structure and function in individuals who have been classified or characterized as to have ADHD, confirming that there is a biological basis for, this kind of, behavioral, I should say, difference. Okay, there's a behavioral difference, but also the brain works differently, and we can see that this difference is there, but we also know that it's many times overdiagnosed. In other words, while the diagnosis rates have increased, this is largely due to improved recognition and understanding of ADHD and not overdiagnosis. It is overdiagnosed, or I should say it was overdiagnosed, for many, many, many years, and often misconstrued as something, that everything got put into this basket. However, now we know that what we are seeing is not really an overdiagnosis, but it is an awareness of what is happening, that there is a, characteristic or set of classifications of how people learn differently, how they present differently in the world, how they, pick up information and sense things, and what they have to contribute. And that's the piece right there that we're going to really dive into in a minute. But, the other myth is that ADHD is a character flaw. Reality is it's a neurodevelopmental condition, not a reflection of laziness or lack of willpower. Many individuals who have been diagnosed with ADHD are highly motivated and hardworking. I mean, that work ethic is tremendous, okay? And if they have been taught, how to, utilize their superpower, they can be such an asset in a company, which is amazing for all of us, as we're thinking this through. Next slide, please. Okay, so the sentient mind, a new perspective, and uh, stay right there because I think I have an alarm that's going, and I don't want this to be playing in the background. So hold on just a second. So, the heightened sensitivity of people who have the characteristics of, the attention deficit, disorder, or attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder. Um, the sentient mind experiences the world with intense awareness. They often pick up on subtleties that others miss. And that's something that we really need. I mean, we absolutely need it to be able to, understand what is working, what's not working, how things can be utilized in our communities, in our offices, in our country. Okay, we need people who have that kind of awareness. And when we, relegate their awareness to something that is perceived to be um, bad, or something that's perceived to be negative, then it sometimes will cause people with that type of awareness to not use it. Okay. So what I have really promoted, in my companies, and when I've worked with other companies, is having people celebrate their differences and share, what it is that they are experiencing, how they see things, what's different about the way they see things, and, and involve them in innovation, involve them in the process of iteration within the companies, helping them to understand that we need you, okay? Because I don't always see things. Now, I have a very heightened sensitivity, to a lot of things, but I am not hypersensitive to noise. I'm not hypersensitive to temperatures. I'm not hypersensitive to a lot of things, but I am extremely aware of everything going on in my environment, to almost, what some people would call a fault, because I'm constantly hearing and seeing and pulling things in. I never received a diagnosis of any kind, because I was, in an era, I believe, where, because of the fact that I, scored so high on tests, I never had to study for tests. I had a very high, cognitive ability. Although I didn't test well in certain environments, but I could remember things. Like I could read it once and it was there. And, so for that reason, that gift that I had, kind of masked, I think, some of the other behaviors that went on, that could now probably put me in the bucket, okay, of having, an attention deficit, because I, tend to be doing 4 or 5 things at once, a lot. Okay. For example, when I'm learning, I'm always drawing or doodling, or, my notes are going to be different than other people's. There'll be squares and circles with all kinds of things all over them, but it's helping me to remember the material, to see the material a different way. And so again, that heightened level of sensitivity that sometimes is seen, in the learning of a person, is something that we need to pay attention to, because that person could be very valuable, in your company, because they're seeing things that other people do not see, and then the divergent thinking. These individuals excel at generating unique ideas and connecting seemingly unrelated concepts. This is huge. Now we have AI to do it. Okay. But having a person with a sentient mind, it still gives you the human touch, okay? And being able to have these things that just seemingly are not related just show up in ways, and come out of a person, for them to say, hey, this and this, actually they are related, and this is why, and it's like, oh, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And here's the raise to go along with the ability for you to continue to do that for us. Right? Yes, we should do that. Okay. Hyper focus. When engaged, the sentient mind can achieve extraordinary levels of concentration and productivity. I have been with people who have, again, displayed the characteristics, had the diagnoses, and if they're working on something, I do not care what is going on around them. If it's something of their personal interest, something that they are, really designed to do, and they're just like focused on it, they can spend hours and hours, work all day and most of the night, on that particular thing. And the level of productivity that comes along with it is amazing. And so understanding again that within that characteristic, we even have to help us, uh, help us help them, or help them help us, by celebrating the hyper focus, but also teaching them how to have some discipline, so that there, along with that, there is some sleep and there's some rest in between. But giving them the ability to understand that energy is directed and guided, towards whatever it is that they're working on. And that is a tremendous ability. It's a gift. It is not a deficit. And then emotional depth. A rich emotional life often accompanies the sentient mind, fostering empathy and creativity. I have never seen, like I've seen when working with people who have this diagnosis, the kind of compassion, that comes out of them, in a lot of other people. It's just such an amazing thing to see and witness and experience, and to be able to embrace and take in. It does something, for those of us who, again, are not necessarily diagnosed, or we don't have the same level of sentience, but what I can say is that what they experience in the heightened sensitivity and the divergent thinking, and even in the hyper focus, can be taught and shared. And if allowed, a person with a sentient mind can help the community, the people that they're working with, the team, the family, the organization, to gain the ability to use those skills, and they can become standard operating procedures, based on what it is that that person is able to share and bring forth. Next slide, please. So case studies. Well, we want to talk about Alex, okay? Because Alex, these are the case studies from my book, and I just kind of pulled these out because I really want you to, you know, mean, just kind of have in the forefront of your mind some people that you might know, okay, that are brilliant. I mean, they have sentient minds, and you may not have been able to properly peg them or put them in a place where that mind can be, challenged and utilized and, even developed further. Okay, so we're going to talk about Alex, who was in the field of environmental science. He developed innovative computer simulation at 13. Okay, and having the concept of, in his mind, that something needed to be done, and he was able to, direct his attention to it, and to the point of actually having a full simulation completed at 13. And so, of course, that is something that we have seen a lot in our communities. We've seen children who were just so very brilliant, and they had the ability, as much with of the brilliance that they had with that ability, something that would not allow them to participate in a regular community of students where they had to sit for long hours and, do paper tasks, okay, pencil and paper tasks, but they really needed the, concentration and the skill set to be able to be directed, and they wanted to be able to move around while doing it. And so if a teacher is able to see this and utilize it, oh my God, what could have been done with Alex, earlier on than 13, so understanding that we want to look at, and you can pull some case studies of your own. I mean, we can look at Albert Einstein, we can look at, I have a long, 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 long list, and I'm not going to start spouting that out because we really don't have that much time. But we can talk about Dr. Emma Thompson, whose field was neuroscience, and there was some groundbreaking research on neuroplasticity, and she herself was said to have been have displayed the characteristics of someone that has a sentient mind. Or Michael Chen, founded a $1 billion tech startup at 22. Okay. And he also was said to have had this, ADHD diagnosis. Okay. Next slide, please. So how do we rethink education for people with sentient minds? You have to train your staff. You've got to be able to provide people with, a real place in the world, and a place in your business where they can, really stretch out, learn their skill set. And continue to build on what they're learning so that they can offer what they have to offer to the world. And of course, while we're offering it to the world, they end up offering it to your company. We've got to recognize diverse learning styles. When you see it, it needs to be something that you, document or memorialize. And then you got to be able to create something that makes sense for that person or the group of people that could fit into that bucket. Implement multimodal teaching methods to engage visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Multimodal teaching is what we used to call, multisensory teaching, back in the day. In other words, it's just having materials available to them that actually are coming to them through many different sensory perceptive, arenas. And so giving you an example, I have a master's degree in instructional design. I've talked about that a few times. And the fact of the matter is, when I'm developing out content, I'm always thinking about, is the person that is going to receive this, are they in a position where they can actually use it effectively? And then I try to encourage creative expression as well, because when you allow people to express and to share and to, contribute, it really does, again, create an environment. It fosters an environment in your company that creates opportunities for, a constant level of iteration and innovation to come forth. You may not use all the ideas, but the thing is, the ideas are there. Okay, now you have something to draw from. So offer project-based learning opportunities that allow students to showcase their unique strengths and interests. And I would say that even in the workplace, you can offer for people to get together and work on projects instead of, assigning one thing to one person. When you have a person that sees things differently and that have these characteristics, putting them with others who don't see things that way, could be the best possible thing, because now you're going to get a well-rounded view of how you can offer, something back to your audience, to your target market. Then have flexible learning environments, create adaptable spaces that accommodate movement and different work preferences. Give people standing desks, okay? If you have an office, don't create a situation that's so restrictive, but give people opportunities for frequent breaks if they need them. If it's a person that actually learns differently and expresses differently, even if you're not sure that they have a diagnosis, or for that matter, they're displaying characteristics, you're not sure why the characteristics are there, that part doesn't matter. What matters is that you give them the ability to be their best selves. And that's going to be giving you in your company an opportunity to have the best version of that person show up every single day. Okay. And then personalized assessment, give them the ability to, instead of using standardized materials and these assessments that people use in business and even in the classroom to evaluate the personalities or evaluate the cognitive abilities, why not use something that is more based on individual growth and diverse skill sets? I mean, in other words, let them compete against themselves. Okay, you did this last year and you did this the year before, and now you're here. Let's look at the growth patterns and let's look at what this can be telling us. You can pull so much more out of a person, and creating for them an opportunity for them to grow against, their own metrics, okay, will, create the opportunities and the desire for them to continually become better, continually grow. Next slide, please. So, what is the power of neurodiversity? Well, it drives innovation. Neurodivergent thinkers often see unique solutions to complex problems. It fuels breakthroughs across industries. It enhances team dynamics. Okay, diverse cognitive styles lead to more comprehensive problem solving and creative collaboration. Your product becomes a different product, a better product, a product for all people instead of a product for one. Okay, or some. It fosters adaptability. Neurodivergent individuals often excel at adapting to change. And we, have to be thinking about, what that means again to all of our community. It's a critical skill, in today's fast-paced world. And so we need adaptability. And people who are neurodivergent give us the ability to have that in our companies. And it promotes inclusivity, okay? And when you embrace neurodiversity, it creates more inclusive and equitable environments for everyone, and so I guarantee if you have one person that's showing up that way, at some point in time, there's going to be another and another. And it may be the clients that you serve or the customers that you have that will also have some of these same characteristics. And you want to be able to serve everyone if you can, okay, with your products and services. Okay, next slide, please. So I have this thing called the DECODE framework that I utilize, which, is there to nurture a sentient mind. And so it starts with discover, identify unique strengths and interests of the individual. And then we want to embrace, accept, and celebrate cognitive differences as valuable assets. Then we want to customize. We want to tailor the learning and work environments to individual needs. Then we want to optimize. How do we develop strategies to maximize strengths and manage challenges? Then we also want to develop. We got to foster growth and through targeted skill building and support. And then lastly, we want to empower, encourage self-advocacy and confidence in one's unique abilities. Next slide, please. So finally, we want to be able to embrace the future, which is really a call to action. Okay. We got to challenge the status quo. When somebody shows up with these paradigms about ADHD and neurodiversity, that really don't work for creating space in our communities, in our teams, in our workplaces for people who have that sentient mind and they have the neurodivergent capacity, we have got to challenge it and remove what's there and replace it with something that works better. We have to educate and advocate. We can't just educate, but we also have to be able to stand up for people who have sentient minds, share knowledge about the concept and the benefits of neurodiversity with others. And when we see someone being treated in a way that is just counter to what we're talking about, we want to be able to be there so that we can make sure that, others are getting in, on this opportunity, because it really is an opportunity. We want to create inclusive environments, implement strategies to support and empower neurodivergent individuals in schools and workplaces and communities. It's important for us to be able to do that. When we have those kinds of inclusive environments, what happens is people feel more likely to share, or people are more likely to share. They feel more included and they feel a part of the community, a part of the team. And so they're going to be their best selves every day, because they have the ability to see where they're celebrated and not just tolerated. Then we want to celebrate cognitive diversity as well, recognizing and honoring the unique contributions of all minds, fostering a world where every individual can thrive. Well, this has been Dr. Patience Jackson Rose, and I do really want to make sure that you have an opportunity to get the book, okay? Because I think that, the concept itself, and when you have it and you have the notes and you're able to go back and reread it, it just keeps you fresh and it gives you tools that you can use in your company to help make sure that people who have these wonderful superpowers are being encouraged to use them every single day, as they are working within your establishments. Thank you so much for being here with us and, help us celebrate abilities this month by being more aware and being a part of a group of people, a revolution of people who, are changing the way we do business, and we're doing business better. Okay. We're doing business better every single moment. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next time.